The rain hammered against our Victorian house like bullets against armor, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Elise claimed she was at another power yoga retreat, but her car sat in our driveway, engine still ticking with residual heat. The dashboard clock glowed 11:47 p.m. through the windshield. I'm Will Harlan, and I run a marine salvage business here in coastal Maine. 20 years of pulling wrecked boats from the bottom of harbors teaches you to notice when things don't add up. Tonight, nothing about my wife's story made sense. The front door creaked as I slipped inside, my boots squelching on the hardwood. Upstairs, I could hear Elise's voice, soft, intimate, completely different from the cold tone she'd been using with me for months. She was giggling. Actually, giggling. When was the last time she'd laughed like that with me? I crept up the stairs, avoiding the third step that always groaned. The bedroom door was cracked open, and through the gap, I could see her silhouette against the window. She held her phone pressed against her ear like it contained the secrets of the universe. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow," she whispered. "Will's going to be at the marina all day pulling that sunken yacht. We'll have hours." My stomach dropped through the floor. I pressed myself against the hallway wall, straining to hear more. No, he doesn't suspect anything. He's too busy with his little boat projects to notice what's happening right under his nose. Her laugh was cruel, cutting. "Ethan, you worry too much. He's not smart enough to figure this out." Ethan Brooks. I knew that name. Regional sales manager for some tech company, always strutting around town in his expensive suits like he owned the place. About my age, maybe a little younger, with the kind of artificial confidence that comes from never facing real consequences. I backed away from the door, my mind racing. How long had this been going on? Weeks? Months? The late nights at the office, the sudden interest in yoga classes, the way she'd started guarding her phone like a state secret. It all made horrible sense now. In my workshop downstairs, I sat among my salvage equipment and tried to think clearly. The storm outside seemed to mirror the chaos in my head. I'd spent 15 years married to this woman, built a life with her, trusted her completely. And she thought I was too stupid to notice her betrayal. Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The next morning, Elise bounced into the kitchen wearing her yoga outfit, all fake smiles and theatrical energy. "Good morning, honey. I'm running late for class." I looked up from my coffee, studying her face. She'd always been beautiful, sharp cheekbones, piercing blue eyes, the kind of controlled elegance that made other women jealous. But now I saw the calculation behind her expressions, the way she performed rather than simply existed. "Which studio again?" I asked casually. "The new one on Harbor Street. I told you about it last week." She didn't miss a beat, but I caught the slight tightening around her eyes. She was lying, and we both knew it. "Right, Harbor Street." I took another sip of coffee. Funny thing, I drove past there yesterday. Looked pretty closed to me. Big "For Lease" sign in the window. Her face went pale for just a moment before she recovered. "Oh, They moved, temporarily, to the community center." "The community center that's been under renovation since March?" Now she was trapped, and I could see her mind scrambling for another lie. Instead, she went on the offensive. "Why are you interrogating me? Don't you trust your own wife?" "I did," I said quietly. "Until last night." She froze, her coffee mug halfway to her lips. "What's that supposed to mean?" I pulled out my phone and set it on the kitchen table between us. Last night, after she'd fallen asleep, I'd finally looked at the phone records I'd been too trusting to check before. 3 months of constant contact with Ethan Brooks, hundreds of texts, calls at all hours, even some international charges from when he'd supposedly been on business trips. How long, Elise? Her mask finally slipped completely. The fake concern, the manufactured innocence, it all fell away, leaving something cold and calculating underneath. How long have you been spying on me? Long enough to know about Ethan, long enough to know about the lakeside cabin you've been visiting, long enough to know that everything you've told me for the past 3 months has been a lie. She set down her mug with deliberate precision, like she was buying time to think. You don't understand the situation. Then explain it to me. We've been growing apart for years, Will. You know that. You're always buried in your work, covered in grease, talking about boat engines and salvage operations. When was the last time we had a real conversation about something that mattered? So you decided to have those conversations with Ethan instead? He listens to me. He sees me as more than just someone to cook dinner and keep house. The casual cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. I never asked you to be a housekeeper. I asked you to be my wife. And I tried, but you made it impossible. Always working, always distracted, never really present even when you were home. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. So, this is my fault? I'm not saying that. I'm saying we both let this marriage deteriorate. No, Elise, I let it deteriorate. You decided to torch it. She straightened her shoulders, and I saw a flash of the woman I'd fallen in love with, confident, determined, unafraid of a fight. But now those qualities felt like weapons pointed at me. What do you want, Will? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry you found out this way. But I'm not sorry it happened. The honesty was almost refreshing after months of lies. At least you're finally telling the truth. The truth is that I haven't been happy for a long time. The truth is that Ethan makes me feel alive again. The truth is that I was trying to figure out how to tell you without destroying everything. By sneaking around behind my back for 3 months? By trying to be sure about what I wanted before I blew up our entire life? I walked to the window, looking out at the harbor where my salvage boat was moored. The storm had passed, leaving everything clean and bright, but I felt like I was still trapped in the darkness. So, what happens now? I asked. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Well, I do. I turned back to face her. You made your choice, Elise. Now, you get to live with the consequences. Something in my tone must have warned her, because her confident expression wavered. What's that supposed to mean? It means the storm's coming, and you're not ready for it. She stared at me for a long moment, trying to read my face. I kept my expression neutral, but inside, my mind was already working. 15 years of marriage, and she thought she could just walk away without consequences. She thought I was too stupid, too distracted, too buried in my work to fight back. She was about to learn how wrong she was. Will, don't do anything rash. We can work this out like adults. Adults don't sneak around behind their spouse's back for 3 months. I picked up my coffee mug and headed for the door. Adults don't lie to the person they promise to honor and cherish. Where are you going? To work, like always. Don't wait up. I might be late. As I drove toward the marina, I caught her reflection in my rearview mirror, standing in the doorway, looking uncertain for the first time since I'd known her. Good. Uncertainty was exactly what she deserved. My phone buzzed with a text from Sam Morrison, my business partner and closest friend since high school. Coffee later? Got some news about that Brooks character you asked me to check on? Sam was an ex-cop who'd left the force after 20 years to join my salvage business. He still had connections throughout the county, and more importantly, he understood that some situations required a careful, methodical approach. I texted back, "My place, 7 p.m. Bring everything you found." The game was about to begin, and Elise had no idea what she'd started. She wanted to play with fire? Fine. But she was about to learn that some flames burn everything they touch. Sam arrived at 7 sharp, carrying a manila folder and wearing the expression he used to get when he was about to arrest someone. We sat in my workshop, surrounded by salvage equipment and the smell of motor oil, while he laid out what he'd discovered about Ethan Brooks. "Your boy Ethan's got some interesting habits," Sam said, opening the folder. "3 different women in the past 2 years, all married, all ended badly. There's a pattern here, Will." I studied the photographs and documents Sam had gathered. Ethan at restaurants with various women, always somewhere discreet, always careful to avoid the obvious places where he might be recognized. But Sam had been thorough. "He's got a system," I said. "Targets married women, probably tells them all the same lines about being misunderstood. Gets better. His ex-wife filed a restraining order 2 years ago. Harassment, following her around, making threats when she tried to leave him. Guy's got control issues." That information hit me like a punch to the gut. Elise wasn't just having an affair, she was involved with someone genuinely dangerous. Despite everything she'd done, I felt a flicker of concern for her safety. "There's more," Sam continued. "He's been having financial troubles. His sales numbers are down, he's behind on his car payments, and he just got turned down for a mortgage refinance. Your wife might be more than just entertainment for him. You think he's after money? I think he's after whatever he can get. And a woman with a successful husband who owns property and a business? That's a pretty attractive target." I leaned back in my chair, processing this information. "What about Elise? Has she been in contact with divorce lawyers?" "Not yet, but I found something else interesting." Sam pulled out another document. "She's been researching domestic violence claims, spent a lot of time on legal websites, downloaded information about protective orders, looked up statistics about emotional abuse." The room seemed to spin around me. "She's planning to frame me. Looks that way. Classic strategy. Claim the husband was abusive, get a restraining order, take the house and half of everything else. With Ethan coaching her, she could make a pretty convincing case." I stood up and paced to the window, looking out at the harbor. The evening light was fading, and I could see the masts of sailboats swaying gently in the breeze. Everything looked peaceful, normal, while my world was collapsing around me. "So what's the plan?" Sam asked. "Because sitting here feeling sorry for yourself isn't going to solve anything." "I need evidence, real evidence, not just suspicions and phone records." "What kind of evidence?" "The kind that proves she's been planning this. The kind that shows what Ethan really is. The kind that makes sure she can't destroy my life the way she's destroyed our marriage." Sam nodded slowly. "I can help with that. But we do this smart, Will. Legal. No shortcuts that come back to bite us later." "Agreed. What do you have in mind?" "First, we document everything. Every lie, every inconsistency, every time she's supposed to be somewhere she's not. Second, we find out exactly what she and Ethan are planning. Third, we make sure the right people know the truth before she can spin her version." Over the next hour, we laid out a comprehensive plan. Sam would continue gathering information about Ethan's background and financial situation. I would start documenting Elise's activities, keeping detailed records of her lies and whereabouts. We'd install security cameras around the house, ostensibly for protection, but really to record any suspicious behavior. "There's one more thing," Sam said as we finished up. "Mrs. Larkin next door has been asking questions about all the late-night visitors you've been having." I laughed, despite everything. Mrs. Larkin was the neighborhood's unofficial surveillance system, a 70-year-old widow who knew everyone's business better than they did themselves. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that suggest she's already noticed your wife's unusual schedule. She asked me yesterday if everything was okay at your house, said she'd seen Elise leaving at odd hours, coming home with different clothes than she left in. Mrs. Larkin might be useful. That's what I was thinking. She likes you, Will, always has, and she's got no love for cheaters. Her own husband ran around on her before he passed." As Sam packed up his files, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not hope that my marriage could be saved, that ship had sailed, but hope that I could protect myself from whatever Elise and Ethan were planning. One more thing, I said. I want to know everything about Ethan's other relationships. How they started, how they ended, what happened to the women afterward. Already working on it. Give me a few days. After Sam left, I sat alone in my workshop, thinking about the man I'd been just 24 hours ago. Trusting, focused on my work, completely unaware that my wife was planning to destroy me. That version of myself seemed naive now, almost childishly innocent. My phone buzzed with a text from Elise. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." I typed back, "No problem. Take your time." But instead of going to bed, I drove to the lakeside area where Sam had tracked Ethan's car the previous week. Sure enough, I found Elise's sedan parked behind a cluster of pine trees, hidden from the main road, but visible if you knew where to look. I parked a quarter-mile away and walked through the woods, moving carefully to avoid making noise. The cabin was small but expensive-looking, with large windows and a deck overlooking the water. Through one of those windows, I could see Elise and Ethan sitting close together on a couch, papers spread out on the coffee table in front of them. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language told the story. This wasn't just romance, this was planning. Ethan was pointing at documents, Elise was taking notes, and both of them had the focused intensity of people working toward a specific goal. I took photographs with my phone, making sure to capture the papers on the table and the intimate way they were sitting together. Then I retreated to my car and drove home, my mind churning with possibilities. Back in my workshop, I uploaded the photos to my computer and studied them carefully. The documents were too far away to read clearly, but I could make out what looked like legal forms and financial statements. They were definitely planning something, and it definitely involved me. I opened a new file on my computer and titled it Evidence. Then I began typing up everything I'd observed, every lie Elise had told, every inconsistency in her behavior. If she wanted to play games with my life, she was going to discover that I was better at this than she'd expected. The next morning, Elise was already gone when I woke up. She'd left a note saying she had an early meeting, but I knew better. I called Sam and told him about what I'd observed at the cabin. "Good work," he said, "but we need more. We need to know exactly what they're planning and when they plan to do it." "Any suggestions?" "Actually, yes. Mrs. Larkin called me this morning. She wants to talk to you. Says she has information that might be helpful." An hour later, I was sitting in Mrs. Larkin's kitchen drinking coffee that could strip paint and listening to the most comprehensive surveillance report I'd ever heard. "Your wife's been busy," Mrs. Larkin said, consulting a notebook filled with her precise handwriting. 3 weeks ago, she met with a man at the coffee shop downtown. Tall, expensive suit, drove a silver BMW. They talked for 2 hours. That sounds like Ethan. 2 weeks ago, she had a different man at the house while you were at work. Older, briefcase, stayed for about an hour. Could have been a lawyer. My stomach tightened. "Did you get a good look at him?" "Good enough. I might recognize him if I saw him again." She flipped a page in her notebook. "But here's the interesting part. Yesterday, while you were at the marina, she had both men at the house. They brought boxes of papers, spread everything out on your dining room table like they owned the place." "How do you know all this?" Mrs. Larkin smiled and pointed to her kitchen window, which had a perfect view of our house. 40 years of living here, and I've never seen anything I didn't understand eventually. Your wife's planning something big, Will, and it's not going to be good for you." I thanked Mrs. Larkin and promised to keep her updated. As I walked back to my house, I felt the weight of what I was up against. Elise wasn't just having an affair. She was orchestrating a complete destruction of my life, with professional help and a detailed plan. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd underestimated me. That afternoon, I installed security cameras around the house, hidden but comprehensive. I also placed recording devices in the main rooms, carefully concealed and completely legal since it was my own home. If Elise and her accomplices wanted to use my house as their planning headquarters, they were going to provide me with all the evidence I needed. The trap was set. Now all I had to do was wait for them to walk into it. 3 days later, my patience was rewarded. I was supposed to be in Portland, meeting with an insurance adjuster about a salvage job, but I'd rescheduled at the last minute without telling Elise. Instead, I parked 2 blocks away and walked back to watch my own house. At 10:30, Ethan's silver BMW pulled into my driveway like he owned the place. He was followed 20 minutes later by a man in a dark sedan, older, wearing a suit that screamed, "Expensive lawyer." They walked into my house like they belonged there. I waited another hour, then called the house phone from my cell. Elise answered on the 3rd ring, slightly breathless. "Hello? Hey, it's me. I'm running late in Portland. Probably won't be back until evening." "Oh, okay, no problem. Everything all right? You sound distracted." "Just yoga class ran long. I'm tired." "At 10 in the morning?" There was a pause. "It was an early class." "Right. Well, I'll see you tonight. Love you." "Love you too." The ease with which she lied was almost impressive. I hung up and walked around to the back of my house, where I could access my workshop without being seen from the main rooms. The security system I'd installed included audio from the dining room, and I put on headphones to listen to what was happening inside my own home. "Needs to look authentic," a man's voice was saying. Someone I didn't recognize, probably the lawyer. "The restraining order won't hold up if there's no documented history of threats or intimidation." "I can handle that," Elise replied. "Will's got a temper when he's been drinking. I just need to provoke him at the right moment, make sure there are witnesses." "What about the financial aspect?" That was Ethan. "How quickly can we move the assets once the order's in place?" 48 hours, the lawyer said. "Maybe less if we file everything simultaneously. The business accounts, the property, even his boat. Everything gets frozen pending the investigation." "And how long before he can challenge it?" "Months. Maybe longer if we play it right. By then you two will be long gone, and he'll be dealing with criminal charges." I had to grip the workbench to keep from storming into the house right then. They weren't just planning to steal my assets, they were planning to have me arrested on false charges. "What if he fights back?" Elise asked. "What if he tries to prove I'm lying?" "That's why we need the documentation," the lawyer said. "Photos of bruises, medical records, testimony from friends about your fear and emotional distress. Build a pattern that supports your story." "I can help with that," Ethan said. "I know people who'll swear they've seen him threaten you, heard him make intimidating remarks. And I've already started telling people that I'm afraid of him," Elise added. "Vivian, some of the women at work, even Mrs. Larkin next door. I've been laying the groundwork for weeks." My hands were shaking with rage, but I forced myself to keep listening. I needed to hear everything. "The key is timing," the lawyer continued. "We file the restraining order, the asset freeze, and the criminal complaint all at once. Hit him from every direction before he knows what's happening. By the time he gets a lawyer and starts fighting back, we'll have control of everything." "When?" Ethan asked. "Next week. I'll have all the paperwork ready by Friday." They spent another hour going over details, discussing how to fake evidence and coordinate their stories. I recorded every word, my anger transforming into something colder and more focused. They wanted to play dirty? Fine. But they were about to discover that I could play dirtier. After they left, I sat in my workshop for a long time, planning my response. The direct approach wouldn't work. They had lawyers and a coordinated strategy. I needed to be smarter, more creative. I needed to turn their own weapons against them. That evening, Elise came home acting like nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek and asked about my day in Portland, playing the role of loving wife with Oscar-worthy performance. "How was yoga?" I asked. "Good. Challenging. I'm getting stronger." "I bet you are." Something in my tone must have alerted her because she gave me a sharp look. "Everything okay?" "You seem tense." "Just tired. Long day." We ate dinner in relative silence, but I could feel her watching me, trying to read my mood. She was probably wondering if this was the right time to start one of the fights that would support her abuse claims. After dinner, I went to my workshop and called Sam. "We need to move faster than planned. They're filing next week." "What do you have in mind?" "Public exposure. If we can't stop them legally, we'll stop them socially. This is a small town, Sam. Reputation matters here." "What kind of exposure?" "The kind that makes sure everyone knows exactly who Elise and Ethan really are before they can spin their story." The next morning I started phase 1 of my counterattack. I drove to Ethan's office building and waited in the parking lot until he arrived. When he got out of his BMW, I was standing right next to his car. "Morning, Ethan." He jumped like I'd shot him. "Will, how did you—" "Nice car. Must be doing well for yourself." Yes. Business is good." He was trying to recover his composure, but I could see the fear in his eyes. "Good. I bet it is. Especially with all the married women you've been counseling lately." His face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. You've got a system, don't you? Target unhappy wives, tell them what they want to hear, convince them their husbands don't appreciate them. It's almost like a business model." "You're crazy." "Am I? Because I've been talking to some of your previous clients. Jennifer Walsh, Monica Stevens, Lisa Chen. Ring any bells?" Now he looked genuinely terrified. Those were different situations." "Different how?" "Different because their husbands didn't find out in time? Different because you managed to destroy their marriages before anyone caught on? I think you should leave." "Oh, I'm leaving, but not before I give you some advice." I stepped closer, and he backed against his car. "Stay away from my wife, Ethan. Whatever you two have been planning, whatever you think you're going to get out of this, it's not going to happen." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you. There's a difference. But if you're too stupid to understand the difference, well, that's your problem." I walked away, leaving him standing in the parking lot looking like he'd seen a ghost. Phase 1 complete. That afternoon, I visited Elise's office. She worked at a tech firm downtown, managing human resources for about 50 employees. I'd been there plenty of times for company parties and social events, so the receptionist knew me and waved me through. I found Elise in her office, talking on the phone. When she saw me, her expression shifted from surprise to annoyance to something that might have been fear. "I have to go," she said into the phone. "We'll continue this later." "Busy day?" I asked, settling into the chair across from her desk. "What are you doing here, Will?" "Thought I'd surprise you. Take you to lunch." "I already ate." "That's okay. We can just talk." She was studying my face, trying to figure out what I knew. "Talk about what?" "About honesty, about trust, about the things married people should share with each other." "Will, if this is about—" "It's about a lot of things, Elise, like why you've been meeting with lawyers, like why you've been researching domestic violence claims, like why you think I'm stupid enough not to notice." The color drained from her face. "I don't know what you think you know, but I know everything." I leaned forward, keeping my voice calm and reasonable. "I know about Ethan. I know about the cabin. I know about your little planning sessions in our dining room. I know about the restraining order you're planning to file next week." She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. For the first time since I'd known her, Elise was completely speechless. "The question is," I continued, "what are we going to do about it?" "Will, let me explain." "No explanations. No more lies. No more games." I stood up. "You made your choice, Elise. Now you get to live with the consequences." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means the storm's here, and you're not ready for it." I left her sitting in her office, staring after me with an expression I'd never seen before. Fear mixed with calculation, like she was trying to figure out how much damage I could do to her plans. She was about to find out. That evening, I called an emergency meeting with Sam and Mrs. Larkin. We gathered in my workshop, and I played them the recordings I'd made of Elise's planning session with Ethan and the lawyer. Mrs. Larkin's face grew harder with each revelation. "That little snake," she muttered, "planning to frame you for abuse while she's the one destroying your marriage." "The question is how to stop them," Sam said. "We've got evidence, but they've got lawyers and a coordinated strategy. In court, it could go either way." "We're not going to court," I said. "We're going to the court of public opinion." "What do you have in mind?" "This is a small town. People talk. Reputations matter. If everyone knows what Elise and Ethan really are before they can file their false charges, their whole strategy falls apart." Mrs. Larkin smiled grimly. "I like it. What do you need me to do?" Over the next 2 hours, we planned a coordinated campaign of exposure. Mrs. Larkin would use her network of friends and neighbors to spread the word about what she'd observed. Sam would share information about Ethan's history with his contacts in law enforcement and the business community. I would handle the direct confrontations. "Remember," I told them, "everything we share has to be true and provable. We're not stooping to their level. We're just making sure people know the facts before Elise and Ethan can spin their lies." The next morning, I started with Vivian, Elise's best friend and biggest enabler. She worked at a boutique downtown, and I timed my visit for the busy lunch hour when the store was full of customers. "Will," she said when I walked in. "What a surprise. Shopping for Elise?" "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about Elise, about some concerns I have." Her expression became guarded. "What kind of concerns?" "The kind that involve her new boyfriend and the plans they're making to destroy my life." The store went quiet. Every customer was suddenly very interested in our conversation. "I don't know what you're talking about," Vivian said, but her face was flushed. "Sure you do. You've been helping her plan this whole thing, providing alibis, backing up her stories, probably even helping her research how to fake abuse claims. That's not... It's okay, Vivian. I understand. She's your friend and you want to help her. But did she tell you about Ethan's history? Did she mention that he's done this exact same thing to at least 3 other married women?" Now I had everyone's complete attention. I pulled out my phone and showed Vivian some of the photographs Sam had gathered. Jennifer Walsh, Monica Stevens, Lisa Chen, all married, all targeted by Ethan Brooks, all ended up divorced and financially ruined. Is that really what you want for your best friend? Vivian stared at the photos, her face growing pale. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. Because Ethan doesn't tell his targets about his previous victims. He just tells them what they want to hear until he gets what he wants from them. I put my phone away and looked around the store. I'm not trying to embarrass anyone. I'm just trying to protect my marriage and my life from people who want to destroy both. If you care about Elise, you might want to ask her some hard questions about the man she's trusting with her future. I left the store knowing that within an hour, everyone in town would know about Ethan's history and Elise's affair. Vivian was the biggest gossip in 3 counties, and she'd just been given the story of the year. My next stop was the marina, where I found Ethan's boat moored in the expensive section. It was a sleek cabin cruiser, the kind of toy that costs more than most people make in a year. I wasn't surprised to find Ethan himself there, apparently trying to make repairs to the engine. "Having trouble?" I asked. He spun around, wrench in hand, looking like he wanted to use it as a weapon. "What do you want?" "Just being neighborly. Thought you might need some help with that engine." "I can handle it." "I'm sure you can. You're good with your hands, aren't you? Good at manipulating things, making them work the way you want them to." "If you're here to threaten me again, no threats, just observations. Like how you always seem to have money troubles right before you start targeting married women. Like how you always disappear when things get complicated. Like how you never stick around to deal with the consequences of what you do. You don't know anything about me. I know more than you think." I pulled out a folder and showed him copies of the restraining order his ex-wife had filed, the financial records Sam had uncovered, and photographs of him with his previous victims. "I know you're behind on your boat payments. I know you owe money to at least 3 different creditors. I know you've been using my wife to solve your financial problems." His face went through several different expressions before settling on desperate anger. "Elise loves me. Elise loves the idea of you, the fantasy you've sold her about being rescued from her boring life. But what happens when she finds out you're just another loser looking for someone else to pay your bills?" "She's not going to find out. She already has." That was a lie, but it had the desired effect. Ethan's face went white, and he nearly dropped his wrench. "I showed her the same files I'm showing you," I continued. "Told her about Jennifer and Monica and Lisa. Asked her how she felt about being just another mark in your con game." "You're lying." "Am I? When's the last time she returned your calls? When's the last time she seemed excited to see you instead of nervous and distracted?" I could see him thinking, remembering recent conversations, trying to figure out if I was telling the truth. The doubt I was planting would do more damage than any direct confrontation. "Here's some free advice, Ethan. Cut your losses. Leave town. Find some other community to scam, some other woman to manipulate. Because if you stay here, if you keep trying to destroy my life, I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what you are." "And what's that?" "A predator, a con man, a pathetic loser who targets vulnerable women because he's too weak and stupid to make it on his own." He raised the wrench, and for a moment I thought he might actually try to hit me. Instead, he threw it into his toolbox and stormed off the boat. "Think about it, Ethan," I called after him. "Is my wife really worth what's coming if you stay?" That afternoon, I got a call from Sam. "You've been busy," he said. "Half the town's talking about Elise and Ethan. The other half's talking about what a snake he is." "Good. What about the legal side?" "Interesting development. Ethan's lawyer called his office this morning and canceled all their appointments. Word is, he doesn't want to be associated with the case anymore." "Why?" "Probably because someone made sure he knew about Ethan's history. Hard to build a case around a client who's obviously running a con game." That evening, Elise came home looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup was smeared, and she had the shell-shocked expression of someone whose world had just collapsed. "We need to talk," she said. "I'm listening. People are saying things, horrible things, about me, about Ethan, about what we've been doing." "What kind of things?" "You know what kind of things." She sat down across from me, looking more vulnerable than I'd seen her in years. "Is it true? About the other women?" "What do you think?" "I think you've been very busy today. I think you've been spreading rumors and trying to destroy my relationship." "I haven't spread any rumors, Elise. I've just shared facts, public records, documented history, things that anyone could find if they bothered to look." "So it's true?" "Which part? The part where Ethan's done this before? The part where he's in financial trouble? The part where you two have been planning to frame me for domestic abuse?" She flinched at the last question. "How did you—" "I know everything, Elise. I've known for days. The question is what you're going to do about it." She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. When she finally looked up, there were tears in her eyes. "I never meant for it to go this far," she said, "but it did. I was unhappy. I felt trapped, ignored, taken for granted. When Ethan started paying attention to me, making me feel special, you decided to destroy our marriage instead of trying to fix it. I didn't know about the other women. Would it have mattered?" Another long pause. "I don't know, maybe not. I was so angry at you, so resentful of our life together. I wanted to hurt you the way you'd hurt me." "How did I hurt you, Elise?" "By not seeing me. By not caring about what I wanted or needed. By treating me like part of the furniture instead of like a person." There was some truth in what she said, and it stung more than I wanted to admit. Our marriage had become routine, comfortable in a way that maybe felt more like neglect than contentment. "So you decided to have me arrested on false charges?" "That wasn't my idea. That was Ethan and the lawyer. They said it was the only way to make sure you couldn't fight back, couldn't try to take everything away from me. Everything I worked for, everything I built, everything we built together. No, Elise, we built a marriage together. I built the business, bought the house, earned the money you were planning to steal. It wasn't stealing. It was trying to get what I deserved. What you deserved was a husband who paid attention to you. What you deserved was a chance to work on our problems together. What you didn't deserve was the right to destroy my life because you were unhappy. She started crying then, real tears that seemed to come from somewhere deep and genuine. For a moment, I felt sorry for her. She'd been manipulated by Ethan just as much as she'd been trying to manipulate me. But then I remembered the recordings, the planning sessions, the casual way she'd discussed having me arrested. The tears might be real, but they didn't change what she'd done. "What happens now?" she asked. "That depends on you." "What do you mean?" "I mean you have a choice. You can keep trying to destroy me, keep believing Ethan's lies, keep pretending you're the victim in this situation. Or you can face reality and try to salvage something from the wreckage you've created." "What kind of reality?" "The reality that our marriage is over. The reality that Ethan never loved you. He was just using you. The reality that you've burned bridges you can never rebuild." She looked around our kitchen, taking in the home we'd shared for 15 years. The life we'd built together before she decided to tear it all down. "I've lost everything, haven't I?" "You gave everything away, Elise. There's a difference." The next morning, she was gone. No note, no explanation, just empty closets and a house that felt like a museum of our failed marriage. I found out later that she'd driven to her sister's place in Boston, leaving behind everything that connected her to our life together. Ethan lasted 2 more days before he also left town, his boat repossessed and his apartment cleaned out in the middle of the night. Mrs. Larkin reported seeing him loading boxes into his car at 3 in the morning, looking over his shoulder like he expected someone to stop him. The lawyer never returned my calls, but Sam heard through his contacts that the man had decided to focus on less complicated cases. Apparently, representing clients who'd been exposed as con artists wasn't good for his reputation. 2 weeks after Elise left, I was sitting in my workshop when Sam arrived with a bottle of whiskey and a grim expression. "We need to talk," he said. "About what?" "About the fact that this isn't over." He poured 2 glasses and slid one across the workbench to me. "Ethan's back." "What do you mean back?" "I mean he's in town, staying at the motel out on Route 1, and he's been asking questions about you, about your business, your assets, your daily routine." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that suggest he's not ready to give up on whatever he was planning with Elise." "But she's gone. She's in Boston with her sister." "That's what we thought. But Mrs. Larkin saw her car parked behind the grocery store yesterday. She's back too, Will. And they're planning something." I set down my glass and tried to think clearly. What could they possibly be planning? Everyone in town knows what they are. Their lawyer dropped them. They have no credibility left. Maybe that's exactly why they're desperate enough to try something stupid. That evening I got my answer. I was closing up the marina when I saw Elise walking toward me across the parking lot. She looked different, harder somehow, like the past 2 weeks had stripped away whatever softness was left in her. "Hello, Will." "Elise, I heard you were back." "I never really left. Just regrouped." "With Ethan?" "Ethan and I have been talking, yes. About our situation, about what you did to us." "What I did to you?" "You destroyed our reputations. You turned the whole town against us. You made it impossible for either of us to have a normal life here." "I told people the truth, Elise. That's not the same thing as destroying you. The truth, according to you. Your version of events." I could see where this was going and I didn't like it. What do you want? I want what's fair. What I would have gotten if you hadn't sabotaged our legal case. You mean what you would have stolen if I hadn't exposed your plan to frame me for domestic abuse? I mean half of everything we built together. Half the business, half the house, half the assets. What any wife would get in a normal divorce. This isn't a normal divorce, Elise. Normal divorces don't involve false criminal charges and conspiracy with con artists. Ethan's not a con artist. He's a man who's made some mistakes, just like everyone else. He's a predator who's destroyed at least 3 other marriages. But if you want to believe his lies, that's your choice. It is my choice, and I choose him over you. Fine. But that doesn't give you the right to half of what I've earned. Actually, it does. She pulled out a manila envelope and handed it to me. Those are divorce papers, filed this morning in county court. I'm asking for exactly what I'm entitled to under Maine law. I opened the envelope and scanned the documents. They were professionally prepared and legally sound. No false charges, no restraining orders, just a straightforward petition for divorce with equitable distribution of assets. You found a new lawyer. I found a better lawyer, one who understands that I have rights regardless of what you think about my personal choices. What about the domestic abuse claims? What about the plan to have me arrested? I don't know what you're talking about. The casual way she lied was almost impressive. If I hadn't recorded her planning sessions, I might have doubted my own memory. So that's your strategy? Pretend the last month never happened and proceed like this is a normal marital breakdown? That's exactly my strategy, and unless you can prove otherwise in court, it's going to work. She was right, and we both knew it. The recordings I'd made might not be admissible in divorce proceedings, and even if they were, they didn't change the basic facts of Maine's equitable distribution law. After 15 years of marriage, she was entitled to a significant portion of our assets. There's one problem with your plan, I said. What's that? You're assuming there are assets left to distribute. Her confident expression wavered slightly. What do you mean? I mean, I've been busy while you were away. Restructuring the business, moving assets, making sure my hard work doesn't end up funding your new life with Ethan. You can't do that. There are laws against hiding assets in divorce cases. I'm not hiding anything. I'm just making sure that what's mine stays mine. The court will see through whatever you've done. Maybe. But court cases take time, Elise. Months, maybe years. And in the meantime, you and Ethan need to eat, need a place to live, need money to pay your new lawyer. We'll manage. Will you? Because I heard Ethan's boat got repossessed. I heard his credit cards are maxed out. I heard he's been borrowing money from some very unpleasant people. Now she looked genuinely worried. How do you know that? I know lots of things, like the fact that he owes $15,000 to a bookie in Portland, like the fact that he promised you'd have money to pay off his debts, like the fact that he's been lying to you just as much as he lied to Jennifer and Monica and Lisa. You're trying to turn me against him. I'm trying to save you from making an even bigger mistake than you've already made. It's too late for that, Will. I've made my choice. Then you'll have to live with the consequences. She stared at me for a long moment, trying to read my expression. What are you planning? I'm not planning anything. I'm just going to defend myself against whatever you and Ethan try to do next. There is no next, Will. We filed for divorce. We'll let the courts handle everything else. If that's true, then you have nothing to worry about. But I could see in her eyes that she knew it wasn't true. Ethan wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully, and his financial problems were only going to get worse. Desperate people do desperate things, and Ethan was about as desperate as they come. The next morning proved me right. I arrived at the marina to find my salvage boat listing badly to starboard, taking on water through holes that had been deliberately drilled in the hull. It would have sunk completely if Mrs. Larkin hadn't seen someone working on it in the dark and called the harbor master. Sam arrived while I was assessing the damage. How bad? Bad enough. Probably $20,000 in repairs, maybe more. And that's assuming the engine wasn't damaged when she took on water. Insurance? Covers accidents, not sabotage. Any idea who did it? I showed him the footprints in the mud around my boat slip, expensive deck shoes, size 10, with a distinctive wear pattern on the left heel. Same shoes Ethan was wearing yesterday when I saw him at the grocery store. Can you prove it? Not in court, but I don't need to prove it in court. What are you thinking? I'm thinking Ethan just escalated this beyond divorce proceedings. I'm thinking he's made it personal. So what's the plan? The plan is to make sure he understands that two can play this game, and I'm better at it than he is. That afternoon, I drove to the motel where Ethan was staying. His BMW was parked outside room 12, and I could see him through the window, talking on his phone and pacing back and forth like a caged animal. I didn't knock. Instead, I used the key I'd gotten from the desk clerk. A $20 bill and a story about being locked out of my own room had been enough to convince him I belonged there. Ethan spun around when I walked in, dropping his phone and reaching for something on the nightstand. I wouldn't, I said calmly. Whatever you're reaching for, I wouldn't. What do you want? I want to discuss property damage, specifically the damage to my boat that happened sometime last night. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. Just like you know about the $15,000 you owe to Tommy Marconi in Portland. Just like you know about the threats he's been making about what happens to people who don't pay their debts. His face went white. How do you... I know lots of things, Ethan, including the fact that you thought you could intimidate me by sabotaging my boat. I didn't. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to pay for the repairs to my boat. All of them. Every penny. I don't have that kind of money. Then you're going to find it, because if you don't, I'm going to make sure Tommy Marconi knows exactly where to find you. You can't do that. Can I? Tommy and I go way back. Did some salvage work for him a few years ago. Pulled a car out of the harbor that had some sentimental value. He owes me a favor. Ethan sat down heavily on the bed, looking like a man who just realized he was trapped. What do you want from me? I want you to leave my wife alone. I want you to drop whatever legal action you're planning. I want you to get out of my town and never come back. And if I don't? Then you'll find out what it's like to have enemies a lot more dangerous than me. I left him sitting there, staring at the floor and probably wondering how his perfect plan had gone so wrong. But I wasn't done yet. Ethan might be neutralized, but Elise was still a problem, and she wasn't going to give up as easily. I found her at the coffee shop downtown, sitting alone at a corner table and looking like she hadn't slept in days. Mind if I join you? She looked up, and I was surprised to see fear in her eyes. What do you want, Will? I want to know if you were involved in what happened to my boat. What happened to your boat? Someone sabotaged it, drilled holes in the hull, tried to sink it. And you think I did that? I think Ethan did it. The question is whether you knew about it. She was quiet for a long time, staring into her coffee cup. I didn't know, she said finally. But I'm not surprised. Why not? Because he's desperate. Because he owes money to people who don't accept excuses. Because he thought this whole thing would be easier than it's turned out to be. What did he think would happen? He thought you'd roll over. He thought you were weak, distracted, too focused on your work to fight back effectively. And what do you think now? I think we both underestimated you. Is that an apology? It's an acknowledgement. I'm not going to apologize for wanting more than what we had, Will. I'm not going to apologize for being unhappy or for trying to change my life. But you might apologize for trying to destroy mine in the process? Another long pause. Yes, I might apologize for that. Might? I'm apologizing for that. For the false charges, for the planning, for everything that went beyond just ending our marriage. It wasn't much, but it was more than I'd expected. What happens now? Now I try to figure out how to get away from Ethan without getting hurt. You're afraid of him? I'm afraid of what he might do when he realizes this isn't going to work out the way he planned. Then why stay with him? Because I don't have anywhere else to go. Because I burned all my bridges when I chose him over you. Because starting over at 35 is harder than I thought it would be. For the first time since this whole thing started, I felt genuinely sorry for her. She'd made terrible choices, but she was also a victim of Ethan's manipulation. There might be another option, I said. What kind of option? The kind where you help me make sure Ethan can't hurt either of us anymore. She looked up sharply. What do you mean? I mean he's dangerous, Elise. To both of us. And the only way to stop dangerous people is to make sure they face consequences for their actions. What kind of consequences? The kind that involve his creditors finding out where he's been hiding. You'd really do that? To protect myself? To protect you? Yes. And what would you want in return? I'd want you to disappear. Leave town, start over somewhere else, never contact me again. What about the divorce? What about it? You want half of nothing? Because that's what you're going to get if this keeps escalating. She considered this for a long time. And if I help you? If you help me, I'll make sure you have enough money to start over somewhere else. Not half of everything, but enough to build a new life without Ethan. How much? 50,000. Cash. Enough to relocate, get an apartment, find a job, start fresh. That's not nearly what I'd get in a divorce settlement. It's more than you'll get if Ethan's creditors come looking for him while you're standing next to him. She was quiet for a long time, weighing her options. Finally, she looked up at me with an expression I hadn't seen since the early days of our marriage, honest, vulnerable, and maybe a little hopeful. What do you need me to do? The plan was simple, which made it more likely to work. Elise would tell Ethan that she'd found a way to get quick access to cash, a joint account I'd supposedly forgotten about, or a safety deposit box with emergency funds. She'd arranged to meet him at the lakeside cabin where they'd been planning their strategy. Meanwhile, I would make sure that Tommy Marconi knew exactly where to find the man who owed him $15,000. Are you sure about this? Sam asked as we drove toward Portland. Once you make that call, there's no going back. Ethan made his choice when he sabotaged my boat. I'm just making sure he faces the consequences. And you trust Elise to go through with her part? I trust her to want to survive, and she's smart enough to know that staying with Ethan is going to get her hurt. Tommy Marconi operated out of a restaurant in Portland's Old Port District. Officially, he was in the seafood business. Unofficially, he provided various services to people who needed problems solved quickly and quietly. I'd done legitimate salvage work for him 3 years earlier, pulling a submerged car out of the harbor before the police could find it. He'd paid well and hadn't asked questions about why I was willing to work at night without involving the Coast Guard. Will Harlan, he said when I walked into his office. Heard you were having some trouble with a guy named Brooks. Word traveled fast in Tommy's world. He owes you money, 15 grand, plus interest, plus the cost of tracking him down. I know where he is. I figured you might. Question is, what do you want in return? I want him gone, out of my town, away from my wife, never coming back. That can be arranged. Anything else? I want it done clean, no permanent damage, no police involvement, just enough encouragement to make him understand that staying isn't an option. Tommy nodded. Professional consultation. I can work with that. An hour later, I was back in my truck, driving toward the cabin where Elise was supposed to be meeting Ethan. I parked a quarter-mile away and walked through the woods, just as I had weeks earlier when this whole thing started. Through the cabin windows, I could see Elise and Ethan sitting at the kitchen table, papers spread out between them. Elise was talking, gesturing toward the documents, playing her role perfectly. Ethan was leaning forward, eager and desperate, probably already spending money he thought he was about to get. 20 minutes later, Tommy's car pulled up the gravel driveway. 2 men got out, big, professional-looking guys who moved with the kind of confidence that comes from experience with difficult situations. I couldn't hear what they said when they knocked on the cabin door, but I could see Ethan's reaction through the window. He went from eager to confused to terrified in about 3 seconds. The conversation lasted maybe 5 minutes. Then Ethan was packing his things while one of Tommy's men watched and the other talked quietly with Elise. She nodded several times, handed over a piece of paper, probably Ethan's forwarding address, and stepped back while they escorted him to his car. Ethan drove away without looking back, and Tommy's men followed him. Elise stood in the cabin doorway for a long time, watching the dust settle on the gravel road. I waited until she was alone before I approached the cabin. "Is it done?" she asked when she saw me. "It's done. He won't be back." "What about his debts? What happens when he can't pay?" "That's not our problem anymore." She nodded, looking relieved and sad at the same time. "I never wanted it to go this far, Will. I never wanted anyone to get hurt. But you were willing to let it happen." I was desperate, unhappy. I felt like I was disappearing in our marriage, like nothing I did or said mattered to you anymore. So you decided to make me disappear instead. I decided to try to build a different life. I made terrible choices about how to do that. We stood there in the cabin where she'd planned to destroy me, looking at each other across the wreckage of 15 years of marriage. "The money," she said finally. "You said 50,000. I pulled out an envelope and handed it to her. Cash, as promised, enough to start over somewhere else. She opened it, counted the bills, then looked back at me. "Why? After everything I did, why are you helping me?" "Because despite everything, I don't want to see you get hurt. Because you were manipulated by someone who's done this before. Because maybe, deep down, some part of this really was my fault. It wasn't your fault, Will. I made my own choices. We both made choices. Mine just weren't as destructive as yours." She folded the envelope and put it in her purse. "What happens now?" "Now you leave. Tonight. Drive as far as you can before you stop. Don't tell me where you're going. Don't contact me again. Don't ever come back." "And the divorce?" "I'll file uncontested papers. Irreconcilable differences. No asset distribution. Clean break. You'll get the papers to sign wherever you end up." "Just like that?" "Just like that." She walked to her car, then turned back one last time. "For what it's worth, Will, I did love you. Once. Before everything got so complicated." "I know. I loved you too." She drove away as the sun was setting over the lake, and I watched her taillights disappear around the bend in the road. Then I walked back through the woods to my truck, feeling lighter than I had in months. The next morning, Mrs. Larkin was waiting in my driveway with a pot of coffee and a plate of homemade cookies. "Heard there was some excitement out at the lake last night," she said. "Just some people leaving town." "Good riddance, I'd say. Town's better off without that kind of trouble." "I think you're right." "So what's next for you, Will? Going to rebuild that boat? Get back to your salvage business?" "Something like that. Maybe take some time to figure out what I really want." "Might I suggest starting with a good breakfast? You look like you haven't eaten in days." I followed her into her kitchen, where she proceeded to cook enough food for 3 people while filling me in on all the neighborhood gossip I'd missed while dealing with my personal crisis. "That Shannon girl from the bar has been asking about you," she mentioned casually while flipping pancakes. "Has she? Seems to think you might be ready for some company now that your situation's resolved." "My situation's barely resolved, Mrs. Larkin. I'm not ready for company." "Maybe not. But when you are, you could do worse than a girl who stood by you when things got difficult." I thought about Shannon, sharp, funny, independent, with her own business and her own life. The kind of woman who wouldn't need to be rescued or entertained, who could be a partner instead of a project. "Maybe," I said. "Someday." "Someday comes faster than you think, Will. Don't wait too long." That afternoon, I drove to the marina and looked at my damaged boat. The repairs would take weeks and cost more than I wanted to spend, but it was fixable. Everything was fixable, given enough time and effort. Sam found me there, staring at the holes in the hull and making mental calculations. "Thinking about giving up the salvage business?" he asked. "Thinking about expanding it, maybe branching out into other kinds of recovery work." "What kind of recovery work?" "The kind that helps people get their lives back after someone tries to destroy them." "Sounds like there might be a market for that." "I think there might be." We spent the rest of the afternoon planning repairs to the boat and improvements to the business. It felt good to focus on building something instead of defending against destruction. That evening, I sat in my workshop, surrounded by the tools and equipment I'd accumulated over 20 years of pulling wrecked things out of the water and making them whole again. The work had always been satisfying, taking something broken and finding a way to fix it, salvaging value from what others had written off as total losses. Maybe that's what I'd been doing with my marriage all along, trying to salvage something that had been damaged beyond repair. The difference was that boats and engines wanted to be fixed. People had to want to be saved. Elise hadn't wanted to be saved. She'd wanted to be transformed, rebuilt into someone completely different. And when I couldn't do that for her, she'd decided to rebuild herself by tearing me down. But that was over now. The storm had passed, leaving behind the kind of clean, clear air that comes after the worst weather. I could see my future stretching out ahead of me, different from what I'd planned, but not necessarily worse. My phone buzzed with a text from Shannon. "Heard you might be free for dinner sometime. No pressure, just a thought." I looked at the message for a long time before typing back, "How about tomorrow? My treat." "Looking forward to it." I put the phone away and walked outside, looking up at the stars that were just becoming visible in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, Elise was starting a new life with the money I'd given her. Somewhere else, Ethan was probably explaining to Tommy Marconi's associates why he couldn't pay what he owed. But here, in this town that had become my refuge and my battlefield, I was finally free to figure out what came next. The storm was over. The salvage work could begin.